Welcome back everybody to another episode of MOTOBOB Vlogs. And I've got an exciting one today. I've been really looking forward to this bike. It's the Kawasaki ZX-4RR. A little inline four screamer that revs up to 15,000 RPM. And this is actually genuinely the first time I've ever ridden it. So let's see what we think. Very kind of Kawasaki to fit the Akropovich accessory exhaust. It's got a baffle in, so it's not super loud, but still. Just sounds like a miniature sports bike, which I guess it is. Quick shifter installed as well. And we've got a bright sunny day with a bit of dry road, a rarity for January. So this should be a fun little ride. You know, I was a little bit worried with this bike that because it's so revvy, you wouldn't really be able to use it so much. You know, all that power at the top end might be well above road speeds, but actually down in second, you know, at 30 miles an hour like this, you're already doing 6,000 RPM, so you know it's not exactly chugging in the low revs. Let's see him first. So it's pretty much doing 45. At 14, the shift light comes in, you're doing about 50 there. Now we're talking about 70 odd horsepower, I think, so even in second, up at sort of 10 to 12,000 RPM like this, it's not masses of shove and grunt. It really does feel like already an engine that you're just going to have to keep it singing, keep the momentum up, and that'll make it rewarding to ride, I guess. I guess that's the whole idea with a little Revvy inline four like this. What a sound. It actually does sound absolutely fantastic. I'm not even sure it needs to be massively louder at the exhaust because you're getting quite a lot of intake sound as well there. I actually realised I just had it in rain mode. There's 4 modes, so rain, road and sport, which I'm sure you can imagine what they do. There is a custom slot as well that allows you to turn traction control off and play with the different settings for TC and power. So probably ideal if you go into the track. But yeah, let's stick it in sport and see what it's like. It's really only quite small, this TFT display, but I don't think it matters too much because they've just laid it out quite simply and you know, it's very easy to read. They've made good use of the space. A simple rev counter across the top, no silly flashy graphics. You know, speed is big, gear position up at the top left, and really that's mainly what you need. I do believe there's also a track view. You've got a lap button as well there, so there must be a lap timer. But look, we'll leave it in the road mode for today and just see how we get on. We do have a select button also on the right hand switch gear over on the right there, and so you can go through some of the little readouts on the bottom like the trip meters and stuff like that, but otherwise it is relatively simple. Oh come on, I just want to get past. Patience. The question is, when you're planning to overtake like this, do you stay in second or bang down to first? There are so few bikes you're actually tempted to stick it down into first on, you know, but you just want to hear that sound. Definitely not that much in terms of mid-range as you'd expect. There's a bit of a surge at the top. Quick shifter's brilliant though, absolutely perfect. No clunkiness, seems to work well at different revs. What a lot of fun. It does surprise you a bit actually with the reviness, because obviously I'm not quite used to it yet. I've just jumped off the R1300 GS for the past couple of weeks. Like that. Now that I've stuck into sport mode and the throttle's quite lively, if you do dip the clutch when you're at low speeds, you know, that's just my habit because most quick shifters don't work that well down at like, you know, the bottom half of the rev range. Yeah, it revs up really quickly. If you're looking at a bike like this, then realistically you're going to be considering stuff like the Yamaha R7, which makes similar power, maybe a little bit less at the top. But there is such a pronounced difference in this smaller capacity inline 4 versus like a 650 or 700 twin, because it really is quite placid in that middle part of the rev range. Not unpleasant, it's not super slow, it is quite nice and smooth in a way. But yeah, definitely an R7 has more of that real world shove. This may be a bit more playful, screaming silliness. I think we all knew what we were getting with the engine though, you know. You could read the spec sheet and have a pretty good idea of what this is going to feel like, but actually I'm feeling pretty impressed by the handling and the brakes and stuff. I mean, specifically on the brake, you've got a pair of 4-piston radially mounted Kawasaki branded calipers up front, but specifically the feel on the front brake lever is nice and firm. There's not much travel in the lever before it starts to engage and bite, and it really does feel like plenty of stopping power for this sort of bike. As for the suspension, it's Showa with a separate function, big piston fork up front. No adjustability other than preload, but probably preload is a slight advantage over some of the other bikes in this market that don't get any adjustability. I'm thinking about the new Daytona from Triumph. I think the R7 has a bit more adjustability, but then the more budget stuff like the Ninja 650, I think even actually the CBR 650R, they're non-adjustable as well. So preload is good, and then the shock, I think you've got preload and rebound, but straight out of the box it's quite nicely set up, this bike. Just thinking about the riding position a little bit though, it's not quite as aggressive as I was perhaps expecting. The bars are clip-on style, they sit sort of in line with the top yoke rather than below it, but also the seat height, I think it's 8-10 mil, and so you don't feel like you're up and over the bars, but you can actually sit up a bit. I'd also say the reach as well from the seat to the bars doesn't feel that far. You can scooch your butt back a little bit, it feels a bit more sporty, but you might want to be just that bit further ahead if you're looking for a really sporty bike, a bit more track focused perhaps. Now I am back to back in this press bike though with the ZX-6R, which they've brought back for this year into the UK, and so that should be a really interesting comparison, not only because it's got that bit more power, I mean quite a lot more power actually, but also the kind of ergonomic side of things I think is going to be more aggressive. Perhaps after riding both, and I'm going to ride them back to back on Monday, I'll actually feel like this is the right balance, at least for the road anyway. But just when you're getting into the ride a bit and tucking in a bit, I feel like I'd just like a little bit more space. I don't think I mind the seat height, I don't mind not being up and over, but I'm not exactly massively tall, and I could just do with stretching out a teeny weeny bit. And there is like a seat hump at the back, so that's sort of holding you in place and limiting how far back you can get your bum. I know a lot of people are actually quite nostalgic for this type of bike. When I posted the news story about it, when they first announced the ZX-4RR for the Asian markets, you know, there was a lot of enthusiasm for small capacity inline 4s, and I think a lot of it is nostalgia for that 80s or 90s era where a lot of people were younger, maybe on lesser licenses or on a budget, and riding these things with their mates and just wringing their necks on the road and having a blast, you know? That sort of thing passed me by though. I wasn't old enough to ride bikes when this sort of thing was super popular. And so look, I think it will massively appeal to anyone who, you know, is a bit misty-eyed about that sort of bike. But also, I will say, I'm really enjoying it just for what it is, without any of that context. It really does feel like an inline 4 that you can absolutely spank on the road, and you can't really say that for all of them. When some of the bikes are up in the, you know, super powerful end of the spectrum, you do end up spending a lot of your time just tickling the throttle in order to not kill yourself or lose your license. Now, of course, there's quite a bit more riding to do in order to comprehensively say what I think of it. But of course there will be a review coming to the main channel, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Do let me know what you think of it though in the meantime down in the comments below. Hope everybody's well, and I'll see you next time, hopefully on the slightly larger sibling of this bike.